Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew. Keith Johnson.
I never travel slower than Warp 9.
Alan Seiler.
This guy gets it. Hold on to your butts.
And Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm adorable.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely adorable.
Yep. And we're back talking about Star Trek.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Right.
So do we have any Star Trek news this week?
We do.
Hey.
This is super interesting. A copy of the very first Star Trek comic book, which was published in 1967 by Gold Key, sold at auction for $46,000.
Wow.
Actually, it's 46,500. The last time a copy of the first issue was sold was in 2019, and it sold for 20.5. So it has more than doubled from 3 years ago. Now, the copy that sold this week was in near mint condition, and it had a rating of 9.6, which is about as close to perfect as you can get for any comic book from the early 60s, mid 60s. So that's amazing. I wish I had bought a copy that I still had so I could sell it for $46,000.
Right?
I was going to say, I can't believe we were outbid. Just barely.
I'm shocked they didn't take my $20 bid.
It went down to the wire.
Right. I remember my dad told me he sold his first edition Spider-Man comic for $1,000 in like the early 80s to buy a computer.
Wow. You can get a nicer computer for that now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and one other thing is there's a company called Rock Love, which is a jewelry company. They have a Star Trek line of jewelry, but they're adding a new line to their Star Trek collection. And this is a line of Star Trek Delta jewelry in each of the three primary division colors. So the line includes a necklace, a ring, and a pair of earrings. Each one is a gold Delta, and it's fitted with a blue, red, or yellow gemstone. And their existing line is really cool. They have some Vulcan-inspired things and some Uhura-inspired things, and really, really nice stuff. And they're adding this new line to it. It's a bit pricey. It ranges from like $85 to $120. So spend wisely.
Yeah, that's not bad for jewelry, as jewelry goes. $85, $100.
Yeah. Not for something of that quality. It looks really nice. It's really gorgeous.
Yeah. You don't want to cheap out with that anyway for a gift,
I don't know. I like the jewelry that I see that's fan made. That's like $20, $30.
Right.
That's just me.
Right. And that wraps up the news for the week.
All right. And Keith, I know we've got some This Week in Trek this week.
Yeah, I got a couple of them here. First off, there was a couple of classic episodes I wanted to look at that are just really cool that aired during this week. One of my favorites, November 13th, 1995, was the DS9 episode Little Green Men aired for the first time.
That is a great episode.
Everybody who's a regular listener knows how much we all love that episode.
Yes.
Awesome. It is so funny. And it's one of those you can spend forever doing quotes, but one of the ones that I absolutely love is when Nog, who had that crazy book, says that humans didn't even have currency until 5,000 years ago. And then Quark says, they're a primitive, backward people, Nog. Pity them.
Right.
But then Nog goes on to point out that it took them twice as long to get to the same point we got. And then the Ferengi still had to buy warp technology, which I thought was kind of funny. It's a great show full of one-liners. And I think what makes it even funnier is that the literally cigar-chomping, hard butt General Denning is played by one Alan Napier, playing so against type because he was Adam in The Way to Eden in the original series. You can't get more different than that.
That's right.
This has got to be Elaine or Matt, and they say, I look forward to watching Little Green Men whenever we get there. One of the absolute highlights.
Yeah.
Great app.
Yeah,
Another classic that aired in November 15th, 1968. Another one of my favorites, The Tholian Web.
Mm-hmm.
Which, the original series has introduced so many great races. The introduction of the Tholians. Also, I'm sure one of you guys knows this. The voice of Loskim, the head Tholian, was voiced by
Barbara Babcock.
That's it.
Yep.
Who also played, I forget, what was her name in A Taste of Armageddon?
Oh, something with a number in it.
Yes, I forget. I should have looked that up.
I forget too.
She also was in Plato's Stepchildren.
Yeah.
And she also voiced the voice of Trelane's mother in The Squire of Gothos. So she was used in the show quite a bit.
Yeah.
One more. This is replete with good ones. November 17th, 1967 was the debut of Journey to Babel.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
This is a hell of a week for Star Trek.
This is a great day for episodes. A great week for episodes.
Yes. One of DC fun. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna make a Star Trek episode, release it this week.
Yeah.
Yes. Written by DC Fontana, the introduction of Spock's parents, Sarek and Amanda. First major role for the Andorians. And I had put in my notes, and where did the Andorians go after that?
Yeah.
We didn't see them again.
Enterprise.
Exactly, where they did really well. Yeah. Absolutely classic show. Some of the best acting of all of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
And last thing I got is one birthday of note. November 13th, 1967, one Whoopi Goldberg was born.
Oh,
nice.
Right. Guinan. Yeah. One of the facts I find so interesting, she was inspired by Nichelle Nichols growing up, but some may not know, well, most fans may know, she approached the Star Trek people and asked for a role. They were kind of like, wait, you're Whoopi Goldberg. Seriously, you can't possibly want to be on this TV show. And what do we do with you? And classic character.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
that's this week in Trek history.
Excellent. Well, if you're listening on the audio podcast, we'll take a quick break right here and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. And then when we come back, we'll be getting into our discussion topics. So stay right there. But if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on. We're going to get into our discussion topic. Let me adjust this camera real quick. So, yeah, this week, for no reason whatsoever, we decided to talk about the Xindi.
Yeah.
And fortuitously, but we're not going to get too far into the weeds on the story arc because that's sort of a separate conversation. Really, I want to talk about the Xindi because I think they were fascinating as a species who, I mean, are a collection of species where you've got multiple species coming from the same planet and coexisting, and at times not coexisting very well. And and I was thinking about it this week, and there's a lot of other races or a lot of other planets in Star Trek that have multiple species, but I think the Xindi are the ones that sort of leap to everybody's mind. And Veronica, I know that you were not as familiar with them, so we had a little Xindi primer this week.
Yeah.
Xindi primate.
Right. So what is your
Xindi Prime
of the Xindi?
So I as we were watching the episode, I was like, oh, hey, I remember watching this actually. I didn't put together this is the Xindi and there's the whole big Xindi thing. It's pretty fascinating to see that many different species working together. It's like all of the Homo whatever species, if we had all ended up surviving,
exactly,
and if like the dinosaurs learned to talk.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. They did. They're on Voyager.
That's true. That is true.
Right.
They left.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one thing I thought of too was, and I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but Earth isn't that dissimilar from Xindus in that you've got the Voth. And something that was hinted at in the Star Trek movies and then on Next Gen and then now made explicit on Lower Decks is that, species like whales and dolphins are sentient. And I mean, on Lower Decks, they're having conversations with them. They're serving on ships. There's on Star Trek 4, a probe comes to Earth to talk to humpback whales. That Earth actually has multiple sentient species as well.
Good point, Charles. And also, it is becoming increasingly a conversation about octopi. And
that's right.
Whether they have some kind of different sentience, because they are so weird compared to other animals. There's something going on there.
Right.
Octopuses.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
Well, I also thought it was.
It is. No, it's not a word that derives from Latin, so it's not octopi.
Interesting.
Well, people use it all the time.
We're gonna have a
not
nerd off.
anymore. That's really tapered off. But look, what an educational show this is.
Right. You don't know what you're gonna get.
Listen,
Okay,
you might
y'all-
learn something.
Y'all know I'm going to be Googling octopi versus octopuses while we're talking. So the
We won't
first
hear we won't hear from Keith for a few minutes.
Right.
I also want to note that octopuses with the 8 tentacles does not sound right. I'm just saying.
What?
you like octopi?
Never mind. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we don't know what you said.
I don't know what.
Oh! I think I kind of got it, but they're okay.
Okay.
Oh, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
But I agree. I agree with what you guys are saying because we on Earth in real life we always just think of ourselves. We're Cro-Magnon, but you had at least 2 right there with the Cro-Magnon and Neanderthals, and now we're increasingly finding skeletons. There's a whole little race that called what are they called? They're called Hobbit people from I think the Australia area. I forget the name.
Yeah, is that the Denovosans or the Denovosans
Yes.
another one?
I think that's the one.
Yeah, there's more and more that they keep finding, and they keep
I've
finding.
not heard any of this.
There's like 30 or 40 or something documented like pre-human species,
Mhm.
and we share DNA with a lot of them because humans being humans, we all sort of did it. You know what I mean? So we don't know if they were killed off or we all just made it until there was just one species left or what.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Interesting.
with the Xindi, I mean, my first thought watching the Xindi is that the humanoids and the arboreals are very much sort of like humans and something that could be a close relative of humans here on Earth.
Right.
Yeah. And then you've got the aquatics, which are sort of like the beluga whales. Less horny than the beluga whales on lower decks. And then, you got the insectoids. I mean, you've got on Star Trek, you've got the Voth, which evolved on Earth and left. I mean, we could very easily have ended up like Xindus instead of just this human-dominated planet for so many years on Star Trek.
Very true.
Yeah. It's interesting though that all 6 of the Xindi, because there are 6, remember,
right?
Because you have the 5 that we saw on screen, but you also had the Aryans who had been destroyed in the Xindi Civil War, basically.
Right.
And I wish we had been able to see them on screen in some way. I love the way that they talked about the Aryans, like in almost mythic proportions.
I think it's avians instead of Aryans.
Oh, Aryans. That's
Aryans does sound kind of white nationalist.
Thank you.
I didn't even think of that.
Thank you for that correction, because
yes, avians. Let's go with that.
Let's do that. How about that? I'm just going to call them bird people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But how they talked about them, like, I remember when my grandfather was young and he would describe, an Aryan flock would take off and would blot out the sun. And I was like, I want to see that.
Yeah.
So,
when the Xindi were introduced, I thought it was just, I've said before, I wasn't the biggest fan of Enterprise and still am not, but I think that the Xindi, I think the concept is really cool. And I think it was executed as well. You've got this sort of weird planet. I mean, maybe it's weird, maybe it's not, but you've got these several sentient species coming from the same planet, and they learn to coexist to a certain extent, at least enough to get into space. And then, they don't always get along, and there's different factions amongst them. But I think it's pretty interesting that, and something that's in accordance, I think, with something realistic here on our own planet is that there could have been multiple species,
Yeah.
And they at least hint that they are genetically related to each other. It's not like it's 6 separate entities. It's it's a collective. It's a relation of 6 offshoots, I guess. And they say that in dialogue, but they also show it by, like, they have the same little ridge. Like all 6 of them have this little so they all have that shared physical resemblance. So Matt awarded me a point for octopuses, but then he took my point away because of Aryans.
We're keeping score now.
All right, Matt. Okay, so
Matt's
Matt's keeping score.
Matt's the scorekeeper.
Matt, I liked what you just did. So cool.
So Veronica, which one was most interesting to you? What was your favorite that you've seen so far? She's only seen a couple of Xindi episodes.
So the bug people look really creepy.
Yeah.
The insectoids?
Yeah. And they really liked using it was like a 5-year-old kid learning to use CGI for the first time, and they put CGI on everything.
There was a lot of weird CGI in that two-parter we were watching. There's these long shots of Malcolm and Trip, and it's like Sims characters walking around.
Sims characters look better,
right? But as far as the aliens, though, I thought the insectoids are cool.
They look cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like they're going to be the extra bad guys of all the Xindi folks.
Keep watching.
Right. I like the reptiles, and I like reptiloids. What do they call them? Reptilians. And I like the arboreals. I thought they were really cool. Yeah. They look like something that could be a close human ancestor or a close human relation on Earth.
Yes. Okay.
Like sloth.
Right. Exactly. At the risk of Veronica, I apologize for this. At the risk of spoiling Veronica, I want to say that it would have been the whole concept of the Xindi is super fascinating to me. I think it would have been a lot more interesting had they had. I mean, obviously, when you have a human crew, they are going to be naturally drawn to the human-looking aliens. Because there's a familiarity there. It would have been so cool if they had been the evil ones, and I shouldn't say evil, the combative ones, and the actual ones that were interested in cooperating would be the lizards and the insects. Of course, you can't do that because the bugs are 100% CGI, and that cost a hell of a lot when they were doing Enterprise, and the bugs were such a heavy prosthetic makeup. You couldn't do that on a regular basis.
Right.
So you had to pretty much go with the people and the sloths.
Right.
As the ones that relate to our crew.
That's actually been a sci-fi pet peeve of mine for years because there's an assumption that because a lot of humans are, for a lot of reasons, are really viscerally scared of snakes and reptiles, that almost every alien reptilian race that's ever been introduced has been bad.
Yep.
The Gorn and so many others I can think of. And there's no real logic in that because look at what we do. We kill like nobody's business. And yet, we're right. You're always portray the reptilian species as evil. And the insectoids, sometimes the same thing. They're so utterly alien to us. And it'd be interesting if they would just be more sophisticated. There's been a couple of times where it hasn't been quite like that in the Ender's Game books. You find out that the reptilian species is not any worse than we are necessarily.
The buggers.
The buggers.
Yeah. So I agree with that. That's always been a thing of mine. The race that I really like because it's so intriguing to me is the aquatics. Because
me too.
They're spaceships. I don't know if you saw their spaceships, Veronica. The spaceships are just so beautiful. They're like works of art as well as ships. And I'm really trying to figure out how you fill a electrical ship with water.
Well, maybe they have a different power source. But the thing is, the ships are gorgeous, but they're huge.
Yes.
I mean, they're like the size of oceans because you've got these big whale creatures swimming around in it and a whole crew of them. So, I mean, they're just massive.
Yeah.
Man, I love it.
And one thing about the aquatics, because as you were saying, they all have traits. I believe, if I remember correctly, the aquatics' main trait was they take a really, really, really long time to make decisions about things. They were the patient ones.
Yeah, to do anything.
Yeah.
But to make decisions, yes, because they weigh everything. And it's interesting, too, because you have these different offshoot species that all have a different concept of time and a different concept of the way that they relate to each other. I think it was a really well done concept, I thought.
Yeah. And it's I mean, for being 2003 or whatever year that was, for the third season of Enterprise, I mean, that's a concept that they really hadn't done on Star Trek.
Right.
Was, I mean, focusing on a multi-species planet like that.
Right.
There had been multi-species planet. We can talk about some of those, but that's something that they really hadn't focused on in the way they did with the Xindi, and I thought that was a really cool new thing for Star Trek at that time.
Right.
Exactly. The closest. Sorry, go ahead, Veronica.
Well, I was going to say every other time there's been multiple sentient species in the same planet, they've always been warring, and
not
one
always
of them the same slaving the other, and that seemed to be a theme.
I've got some examples, but yeah.
The Trill.
That's right. That was one that I had. Yeah.
Charles, you said something earlier which is interesting, and I think it's something that came through, and I remember this way back when I watched Enterprise, and Alan said it too. Somehow they managed to write those species, even though they had differences. And as you start looking at the end of the Xindi arc, you see some of those differences come to the fore. They wrote those people where they interacted with each other as normally as people on the Enterprise interacted with each other. There wasn't like a whole bunch of insectoids this and aquatics that. Not really, because they were, well, one, they were fighting a common goal because the sphere builders had, basically fooled them. But yeah, the way they all interacted with each other, it was so normal to them, and that takes a lot not to. And I think they had just the right amount of an arboreal would say something about insectoids. So every now and then they would say, well, reptilians are not known for their patience and so forth. But they did it just right. It was the right balance where it seemed utterly normal for them to be those different species.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I want to say also, from not from a story perspective, but from a design perspective, they were so incredibly well thought. Everything about these various creatures were really, really thought out and designed really beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I agree with what you were saying. Like it would have been a cool twist if like the insectoids had come to the humans and saying that the humanoids are like you know what I mean? Like that's something they sort of play into our natural prejudices there, that the insects and the reptilians are the evil ones. you know? But yeah, I thought it was a nice touch in Discovery. You know that episode they had where the council was talking and they're all voting and that kind of thing in season 4. And there was a Xindi insectoid in there. And then with a little Xindi logo and stuff, like as one of the people who were voting on things.
What?
Yeah. There was a Xindi mixed in.
I remember us discussing that.
Now I have to go watch that episode again.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. For one, I like that episode a lot, but I thought that was cool that the Xindi, 1,000 years after Enterprise, are part of the Federation. I thought that was neat.
Yes. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till we get to actually talk about the season and about the story arc.
Yeah. Well, we've just, for Veronica, it's a first time watch. For me, it's a rewatch. But I think we've got a gap between Prodigy and Picard, and I think that we need to make a goal to talk about season 3 of Enterprise.
I agree,
because I think it's a cool arc, and I think that we need a little more time than what we'll have for tonight to do that.
100%.
Yeah. But I was looking through some examples of other species in Star Trek, or other planets that have multiple species. Like there's that planet, the Mink and the Volunkians.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. And then that planet that Chakotay sort of got drafted into a war, Nemesis maybe, where it was like sort of the guys who looked like Nausicaans were fighting. We're fighting the other guys. You know what I mean? Like there's been a few examples in Star Trek over the years of just different multi-species planets.
Yes.
And like I said, I mean, if the Voth had stayed on Earth, and then we had the beluga whales had been more of a character on the show before Lower Decks, I mean, Earth isn't that dissimilar from Xindus.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it actually makes sense.
I would like to see more of the Voth and know what happened to them and how they've developed. And
I love the Voth. Yeah,
that's perfect. Prodigy's got to bring them back. That's a perfect Prodigy species.
Yes.
They're space dinosaurs. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
who's not going to love that? Come on.
And they're so freaking powerful and advanced. Because remember, they had a quantum slipstream where they were traveling what would take Voyager months to travel in hours.
Right.
And they also, I never forget the scene where they literally teleported the entire Voyager inside their city ship. I mean, they're literally one of the most powerful races we've seen who aren't, don't have like Q-type powers. Technologically, they're one of the most advanced species we've ever seen in all of Trek. I love the Voth.
Yeah. Elaine requests that we wait to do an Enterprise season 3 recap until she's watched it.
Well, get on it, Elaine.
Yep.
Right. You've got our timeline. You know where we're going to do it. So,
hurry
in
up.
fact, in that break between shows, we could even do it as a 2-parter. Do an episode on the first half of the season, and then 4 weeks later do one on the conclusion of the season.
Yeah, because we're talking about a story arc that goes over
22,
whatever episodes.
24 episodes exactly.
Something like that. Yeah. So I mean, we can certainly do a multi-part special on it.
Right.
Yes.
No pressure, Elaine, but come on.
Right. In fact, set aside everything else and just watch that now, and then come back to the other stuff.
Right. So I mean, we found out about the Xindi on Enterprise, which was made after the 24th century shows, right? So I mean, where do you think the Xindi would be? Like, how would they play into the politics of like Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager?
Challenge accepted, she says.
Yep.
I think they would have to be very important because you do have 5 species, which is incredible. I mean, they're always asking, I remember in the episode Patterns of Force, which is the Nazi one from the original series. I remember at the end of the show, Spock said, with the unification or whatever of 2 planets, this system would be a fine addition to the Federation. So imagine a planet of 5 species, which have absolutely unique contributions. Again, with the aquatics and their abilities, and the reptilians are a little more warlike. Well, you can always use soldiers, and there's a way they think. So I would think that they would be a really important species in the Federation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got a question. All right, Dominion War. Which side is Xindi on?
That's what I was just gonna say. Stop reading my mind, man. I mean, I think it would be super interesting if they divided.
Right.
If the obvious division is that the bugs and the insects go with the Dominion, and the people and the sloths go with us. Right. But I think that would be really interesting, because then you've got the whales who are like stuck in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
That would be really,
I
really
say flip it. The insectoids
I do too.
and the reptilians team up with the Alpha Quadrant.
But you'd have to give them a good reason, because we've already seen them divided that way.
Yeah.
In the way that I described. So there has to be a good in-story reason for them to sort of swap places. And I think that would be super interesting.
I agree. And apologies to Veronica and Elaine. This is not a major spoiler, but the insectoids are not natively evil, because they, again, I won't spoil it, but you find out they do think. And they can change their positions if they really look at what's going on. But I won't spoil that.
It is a spoiler, Keith. Come on.
Let's just say
I personally will not remember any of this when I'm watching. So I'm fine.
But let's just say, given a good reason, you could see the insectoids being on the side of the Federation in the Alpha Quadrant easily.
Right.
Yeah.
See, now I really want to see an episode where like the beluga whales from Lower Decks and the Xindi aquatics have like a team up of some kind.
Yes.
That's a great episode right there.
So from what you're saying, are we saying that no one has ever written any books or anything about the Xindi in all the years?
I'm sure that they may have, but not that I've heard of.
Wow.
I'm sure the Xindi are featured in some kind of books.
That would be good, because I never even thought about that till you said it. They should absolutely be plugged into the time of Next Generation, of Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Absolutely should be plugged into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would love to see
Matt.
like one of either in the novels or in one of the comic book company do its own miniseries that basically retells the Dominion from the Xindi point of view. Just to see what they did and how they were involved and in what way. That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could write so much, because you could write, there's a whole thing you could discuss about what goes on the Xindi planet once they realize what happened with the sphere builders, and once they realize what the reptilians almost led them to do.
Yeah.
So there's a whole conversation there about what's the reptilian status like.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of what happened there.
Yeah.
Maybe they lose status.
Maybe.
Yeah. Did you see Matt Sweatman's comment there?
Yeah.
Matt, you got to binge it all during the holidays. So you'll like binging Enterprise, Matt. I love the series.
Yeah.
Keith promises.
Keith, money back guarantee for Keith.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, I think the Xindi are a cool species, and it's something I'd like to see more in Star Trek.
Right.
Yeah, and like I mean, Keith, you sort of indicated earlier with the octopus thing, we're becoming more aware of sort of our human-centric view of biology on Earth, for instance. And like, what is sentience? And I heard like a biologist one time in one of his books wrote that, I mean, we pass all the tests for sentience, and because we made all the tests.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So I mean, there's some argument for like what level of intelligence is needed and what does it mean to be sentient, and I think that's something that Star Trek should continue to explore because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And absolutely possible, Charles, what you're saying again, because the species look so different. On our planet, insects and fish and dogs and snakes and humans, we look so different. But if you go back far enough in time, one thing, for example, I was watching a nature show about recently, our eyes are the same, which is strange. Pretty much every creature on the face of the earth that has eyes, whether it's an insect or a human, they all kind of come from the same source. Even though we look so incredibly differently, they come from the same genetic thing back in I think it was the Devonian era. So that's pretty wild if you think about it. Pretty much every creature on Earth with eyes has pretty much the same kind of eyes. And you could even do experiments where you can take the genes that create eyes in humans, and they've done this, and you can inject it into certain animals that don't have eyes or don't have eyes in certain places, and they will grow eyes because it's still pretty much the same kind of genetic structure. But then look how different the shells around the eyes are.
Yeah, that's the beginning of an Outer Limits episode right there.
Yeah.
Now I can see you.
Right.
Jeez.
Oh man. Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing for them to explore. I know that like one of the original Star Trek, like when Gene Roddenberry was pitching Star Trek, and he wrote sort of a premise for several, like 5 or 6 different episodes, right? And some of them got made and some of them didn't. One of the ones that didn't get made was because Star Trek was sort of a Western in space. And it was like this planet of colonists that were basically cattle drivers. But the cattle, it turned out, were sentient. And that was the sci-fi story of it. And that story never got made. But that's one I think would have fit right in. I think that's sort of right up Star Trek's alley, that what we think of as sentient species isn't necessarily a sentient species.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And Trek always explores the thing of people that could be beyond us or above us think we're not sentient, which is always a weird concept to me.
Right. Yeah. And that's happened on Star Trek before.
Yes.
Right.
All right. So any closing thoughts about the Xindi before we move on to the latest episode of Prodigy?
You have made me want to see more Xindi now, because I hadn't really thought about the fact that they didn't show up in any of the Next Generation stuff because they couldn't. But I really would like to now see if they're in any fiction, because they're a really great species.
Well, if you want to see more Xindi, then you should watch this week's episode of Prodigy.
Good segue.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Veronica, you want to throw out a spoiler warning for us?
Now that Alan's already ruined it.
Right.
Boop. 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 Spoilers.
Hey, great job. Great job.
I like that semi truck backing up.
Yeah.
To deliver our spoilers.
I was thinking more of a warning in his face where it just goes. Boop.
I know, like a beacon, like a I get you.
Like the Valiant marker buoy that they found in Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Right.
Wow.
Okay,
wow. Boy, did you do a deep dive? Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Right. Well, awesome. So this week me, the guy on the podcast who doesn't like Enterprise that much, suddenly became very intent on doing a Xindi episode. Because I caught a glimpse of a Xindi insectoid or a Xindi reptilian in one of the promo shots. And I didn't want to spoil you guys, but all of a sudden I was very insistent we should do a Xindi episode. Right. So I mean, the Xindi were back this week in some capacity. What did you think of the Xindi's return to Star Trek after all these years?
I was so excited.
Right.
Like, I know that you guys get up super early and watch it, and I get up half an hour earlier than I normally would. So as soon as they came on screen, I grabbed my phone and I was texting Chuck. I'm like, oh my God, it's Xindi.
I know. I was at my desk and I was like, I know. What a coincidence.
I know. I was like, dude. And we had only just decided to do a Xindi discussion for no reason.
What a coincidence. I know. I was like, dude. And we only just...
Why are we getting feedback?
That was me. Sorry.
Oh.
I had 2 devices and somehow they both came up. Apologize.
Yeah, so that happened on Doctor Who one time. Time skipped a groove. What? I don't know what's happening.
Right.
But yeah, so I thought they looked great. I thought they were used well. It's interesting to see the Xindi in the next gen era of Star Trek, in that 21st century era.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the great thing that these new shows can do is just mix in stuff, because the Xindi would be there,
Exactly.
So in this case, the Xindi are in this this barren like outpost out in the middle of no place. You know, it's like this far off sort of like Mos Eisley kind of a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do we think of the episode this week? What did you guys like? How did you guys like Prodigy this week?
My favorite part was when Rock was like, "You all met Starfleet, and none of you told them about the deadly weapon." That was my thought as well.
What we're all
my
thinking
thought as well.
Episode. Right?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you say, "Hey, we didn't steal your ship, but it has a terrible thing, and this terrible thing happened," and why isn't that the first thing out of your mouth?
Right.
Okay, I'm glad we're all thinking this, because that was the one takeaway that frustrated me about the show, because it's like those shows you watch where there's a man and a woman or two people who are in love, and just when one's going to tell them I love you, they find him kissing somebody else. Because I was the same way. I was like, one of them, like Dahl, he literally could say, "Captain Janeway, listen, we didn't steal your ship," and blah 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 and blah blah, and this. It could have been that quick, but instead they kept finding ways to make them not do it, and that frustrated the heck out of me.
The funny thing is that Jankum Pog literally started to say the words, and then got distracted, and which I think is hilarious.
Yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah, I thought Tellarites lived by insults. I thought that an insult was just more honest. He shouldn't have really been so pushed, taken aback, should he?
Well,
he wasn't raised by. He doesn't know.
Well, I guess his instinct too probably is to argue back. You know, you've been insulted, you got to insult him right back. You know, you keep arguing.
Yeah, I just think I thought he should have stayed.
Yeah, I like the little insight that Pog is a name they give to runts.
Yes,
because Jacob Pog is short.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you look at him on the holodeck episode, and it's compared to a human, he's like up to your waist.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool seeing the two Tellarite characters meet up, and I thought it was cool that I love that the Janeway crew part of the episode, part of the storyline that's going on, and the Prodigy crew really crossed over this week.
Yeah,
I do too. Yeah,
and for me, the coolest thing about this episode is those Starfleet overcoats they were wearing.
They're like Starfleet uniform overcoats. I can't believe you got that too. I wrote that too. And they had the hoods and the gloves.
Can I order that? I need one.
Awesome. Right. Yes. Those are the best things I've seen since the Picardigan. I mean,
right.
Yeah, they were awesome looking. I literally wrote down, these are awesome uniforms with the hoods, and then even when they were back on the ship, they had the gloves and stuff like that. It's like they took the dress uniforms from TNG and turned them into functional away mission uniforms or something.
Which makes perfect sense. You're going to an ice planet, you wouldn't wear your regular jumpsuit, right?
Yeah,
you would wear like a Starfleet overcoat of some kind. And I'm just saying, if they sold those Starfleet overcoats with the hoods, I would buy one right away.
Me too. Those were great. I actually thought I was extremely frustrated by how they could not, but just because they want to keep the plot going, right? I was, like you said, Veronica, I was extremely frustrated how nobody could literally just blurt out, Captain Janeway, don't arrest me, blah, 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 blah. But it was still a good show. I still enjoyed the show because, and you also said something, Charles, I don't think I expected Janeway, the quote unquote real Janeway, to be this involved in the series. And I'm loving that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Elaine thinks that they just got intimidated because they are still kids after all.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. And I mean, like you're talking about Janeway being involved in the show. I mean, I didn't expect the show to be like a secret sequel to Voyager when it started,
Right.
But, I mean, this is a great sequel to Voyager where now Janeway is a vice admiral. They always stress the vice admiral thing, which is weird to me, but she's a vice admiral in charge of a ship, in command of a ship, looking for Chakotay and hunting these characters. And I love it. It's like a direct sequel to Star Trek Voyager, which is a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So Veronica, what did you think of it this week?
I'm really interested to see how Janeway is going to process things, because she hasn't really fully processed that they're kids and this is what's happening. I think I think that's hit her, obviously, because she said it.
Yes.
But I don't think she's fully processed it, and she's still in the mindset of these people destroyed a starship station. These people did something to Chakotay.
Right.
And I feel like some of the episodes moving forward, she's going to start putting some pieces together.
Yeah.
I feel
totally
like
agree.
Janeway is going to be the one that reaches out to them and makes the connection, because she's going to be the one that figures it out. It's not going to be them making it to Starfleet, because they're not going to.
Yeah.
Because they're kids.
Right.
And she's doing that Star Trek captain thing right now, where every Star Trek captain at some point gets a little too obsessed. You know, every Star Trek captain we know has had their "I'm a little too obsessed" episodes, right? So that's where Janeway is right now, where she's a little too obsessed. But I think, I think ultimately she's going to figure out what's going on and take mercy on these kids.
I think that when recognizing in this episode that they are kids, I think that's the linchpin of the whole thing. But you know, she may be in her obsessed mode, but she's much more calm about it than we've seen other captains who have been obsessed, and even Janeway herself, who has had her obsession moments in Voyager. This is pretty level-headed for her in that mode.
Yeah. I love that moment when she said, "They're here." Yeah. That was just a great, like a very Star Trek episode moment, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Matt says, "I'm hoping Janeway, seeing they're just kids, she softens her stance towards them." Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what's gonna.
Yeah, they'll figure something out. I mean, I expect that like the Janeway after the kids thing's gonna last about this 10 episode stretch, and then there'll be some other twist on it. Right, for the next 10 episode stretch. They seem to be structuring the show like 10 episode little story arcs.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, the first half was done in 5 episode blocks, and this one seems like it's coming to a sort of a peak next week's episode, which is number 15. So if you were going to divide another 5 and 5, this would be a good like cliffhanger kind of thing. But obviously we're getting all 10 in one stretch. So I don't know. I don't.
Well, that's a good point.
I was just thinking this seems like the next to the last episode, you know, before a big moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did y'all think about Okana?
I was just gonna say this.
I know. I loved Okana. I thought he was great. He felt very much like the same guy from Next Gen, where he's sort of this like 2-bit Han Solo. You know, he's like the Han Solo you get at the dollar store, you know.
If you order Han Solo from Wish.
Right.
I love Billy Campbell. I love Billy Campbell. That's literally one of my least favorite TNG eps. So I was like,
Well, it was a crappy episode, but the character is cool.
The character.
Well, he thinks it was a crappy episode too, and he thinks he wasn't very good. I read an interview with him where he was like, "Great, bring him back, and let's try again. You know, let's give me another chance at it."
Right, absolutely.
And I mean, but to be fair, in season 1 and 2 of Next Gen, everybody was terrible.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's not his fault that there's a bad character, you know. But yeah, I love seeing him back. You know, it's like 18 years after his last appearance in universe.
Right.
It would be about 18 years to where we are now. And I love that he's still out there, and he's so proud of his ship that can go to warp 4. You know?
Yeah.
That was great.
I love Jankum considering himself royalty, where he has a certain speed he has to go.
Right.
Matt Sweatman says he didn't realize it was Billy Campbell.
Yeah, they got him back.
Yes.
Which is great. Why wouldn't you? You know, he's a fantastic actor.
Absolutely.
And Matt, you may realize also the trivia thing is that Billy Campbell was also in the running to play Riker. That's who he auditioned for.
And he was the Rocketeer, and he was on the 4400.
That's right.
That's true.
Yep.
But more importantly, he was in a really good drama series called Once and Again with Celia Ward. That was really good.
Nice.
Yeah, should look it up. Good show.
Okay.
About middle-aged people falling in love.
Oh,
that doesn't sound more important to me. That doesn't sound more important than Okana.
Did he have a rocket pack in that episode?
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it. I liked the little action, a little like bringing the plots forward and moving.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I love the scenes with the Starfleet crew on the planet. I love the Tellarite guys meeting. You know, I thought this was just all around. It was just really well done.
Yeah, it was an action-packed episode.
It was. And Charles, sorry, go ahead, Alan.
I was just saying, it was a really good one it felt very Star Trekky because you have all of the races that make up the 2 crews. You get Klingons, you get Xindi, you get some other guys at the end. we'll talk about that in a second. And there was just so much of like all of Star Trek represented on this one planet, and I thought it was so much fun.
Yeah. And Charles, to the discussion about the Xindi being integrated into the thing, they're obviously well known because O'Connor says they're spicier than usual. So obviously the reptilians have a reputation like Nausicaans and others for just being kind of aggressive. So they're obviously not an uncommon sight.
Right. And I thought that, I mean, it still feels very much like they're on the fringes of Federation space, which I think worked very well for the story. You know, like if they were at like Andor this week, it would seem strange, you know. I think they're sort of being on these sort of fringe outposts, and they're skirting the edges of Federation space. I think it works very well.
Right.
And, I mean, what do we think of what hatched out? What do we think of Murph? The Murph. What are they calling it? The metamorphosis. There was a live video you could watch on Twitter where you could watch the egg. Like,
really?
Gonna hatch. I think it was probably a loop, but they had a little Twitter thing for that.
How funny!
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like a countdown to the episode. So what do we think of the metamorphosis? What do we think of what hatched out of the cocoon?
Don't really think anything of it yet.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed that it was humanoid.
Me too.
So I mean, maybe he's just emulating the human. He's around a lot of humanoids.
That's my guess.
But I'm hopeful that Murph will get weirder. If Murph is just a humanoid from here on out, I'd be a little bit disappointed about that, because I would like Murph to continue to be very strange. You know,
well,
me too.
Hollow Janeway said something like, "I'm expecting big things out of you," or something like that. So I always wonder if that was some weird foreshadowing to what you're saying. Like Murph may morph into something even stranger.
Well, I hope so. I hope he does.
Yeah,
he's kind of like the Groot of this show.
Yes.
Right. Right. I thought that was pretty cool.
Matt says, I do kind of wish O'Connor was still with the Terry Hatcher crew person from TNG. That would have been a good gag. That's true. I would love to have seen her back on track. It's a peak. I don't know what the hell that means. And Elaine says that she loved the new Murph, but yes, I would love to see the weird in them. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Yeah, I mean, and then they could always bring back like Captain Terry Hatcher to cross paths with O'Connor. That would be cool, I think.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, we also at the end of the episode, they sort of warped to Romulan space.
Yes.
So it looks like we're gonna get some Romulan action.
I'm here for it.
Right.
I'm ready for some Romulans. Come on, man. Let's do it.
Well, I thought that the first off, my first thought was the Romulan warbirds looked really cool.
Yes, they did.
They do perfect starships on this show with the Ferengi Marauder, now the Romulan warship. Like they just recreate them wonderfully. But I was thinking like they're on the edge of the neutral zone, and this Romulan warbird shows up. She's like, "Don't you enter the neutral zone? Like you're in the freaking neutral zone right now."
Yep.
Hypocrite.
Yep. Exactly.
That seems to happen a lot with the Romulans.
Right. They show up. You can see their ship, and they're like, if you enter the neutral zone, it's war. I was like, well, where are you at?
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Because they also own the neutral zone.
Huh?
Because they think they also own the
neutral zone. But I'm excited for more Romulan action. I think we're getting more Romulans next week.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm always down for Romulans. I still don't think the Romulans have ever really gotten the proper full treatment they needed in Star Trek history. So I'm always down to see some Romulans.
Yeah. And this is before the Romulan star went supernova.
Yeah.
So the Romulans are still just the Empire. They're still at the height of their powers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt speculates that Murph is slowly morphing into Chakotay.
Okay. Maybe.
Anything can happen. It's Star Trek.
Right. Hey, you never know. You never know. So where are we at in the season? You said next week is episode 5 of this new batch, right?
Correct.
That's episode 15 of the season.
Correct.
So we should have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6 weeks left.
6 weeks left.
Okay.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are you guys looking forward to? What are you expecting to see from the rest of the season?
Well, in this episode, we finally start to see these variant story arcs start to like merge together. So
Right.
all these pieces that they've been like laying out on their little chessboard are finally converging. And what I'm looking forward to most is seeing how well, first of all, how long they're going to draw this out with Janeway chasing the kids before some understanding is achieved, for some resolution is got. But I also am really interested. Well, there's two things. One, I'm interested to see how this whole thing is going to play out with the diviner, and since he is on Janeway's ship, I'm really wanting to know how that's going to play out. And I'm still super curious why Dreadnought is continuously listed in the closing credits.
Right.
And what he's doing, and where is he? Is he one of those crew persons? I don't know. Like he's infiltrated somehow, and I don't know. I'm excited.
Maybe
though.
Dreadnought is the device.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe.
That totally makes sense. I think
Never
Veronica has cracked it.
Right.
Like, how the hell did we not think about this? Good job, Veronica.
Hey, look at me.
That's good speculation. I never thought of that.
I know.
Yeah.
I think I didn't think of it because the voice actor is credited, and so far the device hasn't said anything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, it could just be that he's contracted for the season. I don't know.
That's possible.
I mean, he could be doing supplementary voices, but it could just be that because he's a fairly well-known actor, so maybe his agent negotiated a deal where he's credited for the season. But I would like to see him come back. I thought that was an interesting character, and I'd like to see more of him. Yeah. I like the diviner storyline. I'm anxious to see whether he becomes his old self again. Like, how much does he remember?
Right
after Zero broke his brain.
Right.
Apparently, didn't break it that much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gwen was pretty shocked to find out that he's still out there, or
Mm-hmm.
that he's out there looking for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Do we know at all? Sorry, for what you're saying. Do you know at all if they plan to wrap up the storyline in this one season, or
no?
I hope they
anything.
do.
Yeah.
I hope they wrap it up in one season, because I think a 20 episode arc would be really nice. And 6 episodes, I didn't realize that many to go. That's a lot of time to really tell a good story and bring it to a satisfying conclusion.
Totally.
Yeah, they're doing a good job of. You got a few episodes with this sort of story arc, and then it takes a twist. And then you got a few more episodes that take us, you know what I mean? Like, they keep giving it the little twists. So yeah, I mean, Alan, you're right. It might be next week that we get another little twist in the story, and I'm interested to see what that is, because I mean, they've got a pretty fast ship where they could. I mean, I'd love it if they just cranked it up to full throttle, and then like there's a Dominion warship, like you could cross into the Dominion space. I'd love to see a Jim Hadar pop out.
Oh yes.
Like, they can do it whatever they want. They're like sort of prime Star Trek time, and they seem willing to use the universe, which is a fun thing. They're telling their own story with their own characters, their own design sensibilities, and so forth, but still using the Star Trek universe, using the old designs, using the old character designs, using the old species designs, sort of mixing it. And I love that. I'm pretty shocked. I mean, I was just thinking about this week that like the Star Trek cartoons are the shows that I'm enjoying the most right now.
But I like the way that they have done it, because it starts out as totally its own thing. And very gradually over the past 14 episodes, they've introduced more and more traditional Star Trek stuff. Right. And I think it's been, for a new viewer or for a young person who's, like, this is their first thing, this is the perfect exposure. It's the perfect like launching point. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember the first episode or two, and I was saying, it doesn't feel that Star Trek-y. It feels more Star Wars-y.
Yep.
And now they're like with Okana being chased by Xindi and Captain Janeway, and they're running into Romulans. You know what I mean? It's like Star Trek overload. So I think they're doing a great job of bringing those ideas together.
Right.
Yeah.
And Charles, you mentioned the technology, and I made a note of one thing was Jankum, or I think it was Jankum. They talked about Janeway's ship being quantum slipstream powered.
Yeah.
Now, from Voyager, that was the technology that they couldn't master. As a matter of fact, that was the technology in the really well-received Voyager episode, Timeless, where they use the
Right.
slipstream and things go bad.
Right.
So I'm very interested about. They obviously don't have it at full whatever, because with a quantum slipstream, the protostar can't get away. There's just no way. That thing is way too fast. But I find it interesting that that technology is now integrated in the Starfleet ships.
Well, I mean, you notice that the Dauntless is based on the Dauntless ship they found in that episode. The Dauntless, the one that precedes the Timeless episode.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, they used a very similar design. They've added Starfleet tech to it with nacelles and everything. It was like the original NX-01 that was on Star Trek. You know, it was like the NX-01A, and then they used the same bridge design, and that ship was called the Dauntless. The one that Ray Weiss with the big head was captaining. You know?
Oh, that was a great app. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it was based directly on that. Where they're using. I love that they're using technology that Voyager encountered in the Delta Quadrant. Yeah, that's one of the things that everyone always wondered when they came back. They came back with like Borg plating and you know, all kind of crazy technology they found. Like, I love that Starfleet's incorporating that into the designs and stuff. And I imagine there's some kind of trade-off where it's not gone fleet wide, because we know that by the time of like Discovery in the future, it's not fleet wide. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, who was it just recently? Was it Lower Decks, or was it this show that said some of the tech that Janeway brought back was basically not used because of the future Janeway and the whole time thing? There was some. Yeah, I just heard that. I thought I heard it on Lower Decks, or maybe I read it, but they did say that because of the whole thing with the end of the Voyager series, because future Janeway came back, that some of the technology they wouldn't use because it was a temporal violation, which I think is kind of silly. So, yeah,
I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember that at all.
I absolutely remember that from the last 2 weeks, and I'm gonna have to find where I got it. I must have read that then.
I think you're dreaming that.
I gotta look this up. Where did I do that? Okay, I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah. Anybody have any closing thoughts about Prodigy this week before we wrap it up?
I thought it was fantastic. It was action-packed. It's bringing all the variant storylines together. Man, I felt like it was a lot of forward momentum.
Yeah, agree. Good episode. Kept me engaged the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, next week we're going to be live again, same time, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we're talking about doing a Romulan episode since the Romulans are back. So I mean, we always sort of spring this on people, but if people want to get prepared and come to the conversation with their own ideas, like what do we want to talk about? We're talking about our favorite Romulans. We're talking about just Romulan culture in general. Any thoughts?
I think both. I think favorite Romulan episodes. In what episode were the Romulans best portrayed? All that stuff.
Yeah. So watch The Defector before next week. Is the moral of the story. That's a great episode.
That is phenomenal.
Of terror.
Phenomenal. Oh man, so many good ones.
All right, so Alan, where can people find more of you?
Well, okay, you could go to cosmicpress.com, KOZMICpress.com, and then you can see it's a jumping point from there to all of my various podcasts.
The Alanverse.
The Alanverse. Yes, exactly.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on the standard social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Oh,
and I win.
Yeah,
Veronica gets a point from Matt.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Speculation
for the Dreadnought.
I got no points from Matt this week. I'm taking that personally, Matt. Well, Veronica, you and I have some big things coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, we've got a very special episode of Monkeying Around that's coming out as we're recording this tomorrow. So if you're listening to this tomorrow, it's out today. Where there's this new Monkeys Headquarters Super Deluxe Edition out, right?
Yeah.
And our friend Derek Miner is one of like the world experts on monkey mixology, and he invited us over because he had the set already. So we've already listened to it, and we recorded an episode with Derek Miner and Craig Smith, and these guys are working on sort of the authoritative book on monkeys mixography.
Holy shit.
Different
holy
versions.
crap.
Right. And so we had a great discussion with them about their work and what they're doing. Also, the new Monkeys Headquarters Super Deluxe Edition. Before it's even out, it comes out tomorrow. It's like shipping now. People haven't even received it yet. So we had a great time with them, and that episode should be out tomorrow. And our friend Elaine, who's with us here tonight in the comments, is on that episode as well. We all had a great time.
Yeah.
But also, as far as Felt Nerdy goes, and I'm sorry for sort of taking over
That's okay.
the thing, but coming up the weekend of December 10th and 11th, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary of being Felt Nerdy. Our first performance on stage together with puppets as Felt Nerdy was at the Holiday Puck and Puppet Show in December of 2012. And then now this year we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary at the Holiday Puck and Puppet Show. Will be December the 10th, and it's a big night for us. We're doing more than we usually do at the show. We're sort of bringing sort of a collection of our favorite routines we've done at the Holiday Puck and Puppet Shows over the years. It's our favorite puppet show that we do every year, and so we're going to be doing a big celebration for our 10 years as Felt Nerdy. And then on December the 11th, we've been invited back to the Sinful Sundays variety show, so we'll be doing another burlesque performance there. And so it's a big weekend, December 10th and 11th. So I'd love it if folks came out and celebrated with us.
That's
nice.
Super cool. Yeah, really, really awesome.
I didn't realize it'd been 10 years.
I know, I hadn't either. It flies.
You know, it's so funny. You know what reason I didn't realize that, because when we first met you guys, I was going to say something like, have you ever been to the Center for Puppetry Arts?
We have.
That's the first thing anyone says when we were like, yeah, we do puppets.
Right.
Have you been to the center? Really?
Yeah. All right. Veronica, do you have a closing for us this week?
I thought we were escaping to a ship. Don't worry. We're on it.
Great. Was that from the episode?
Yes.
Hey, awesome then.
All said.
I didn't know if you were just freestyling or if that was from Star Trek.
I love it.
No, I quoted Okada and Dahl.
Oh,
that's
great.
right.
Good job.
That's
Good
right.
job. I'm proud of you.
All right. I guess that's it for us this week. See y'all next week, next Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern.
Bye, everybody.
See you then. Bye.